What's up, Salt Strong Nation? It's Courtney, and today I want to talk to you about one of the most important things that you can do if you want to be more successful at surf fishing, and that's learning how to read the beach. So we're going to dive into what you're going to be looking for when you go out to scout the beach at a low tide. Then we'll jump to some on the water footage so that when you're standing on the beach, you know exactly what you're looking for. And then we'll come back here to the board and we'll take a deeper dive into what that structure means and why it's so important. Let's get to those low tide photos so that you know exactly what you should be looking for. Try to identify the points, the holes, the deep troughs, the runouts, and the high tide water line. And that high tide water line is going to be so crucial because you are going to know exactly how far you're going to have to cast in order to get to that structure that you just found when you're there at a higher tide. Let's get on the water so that you can see that footage and know exactly what you're looking for. So if you look over here to my left and you see all of these breaking waves here, they're all coming together, they're breaking really, really close together. That's actually a point. And points are great for holding bait. Points are also great for creating part of the fish highway, and I'm gonna show you a specific example of that that's over to my right. But you want to look for that. So you see these crashing waves here, those are on a point. And then if you look directly in front of me, there are no crashing waves here. They're forming, but they're not crashing. These are your deep troughs, okay? That's what you want to look for if you want to find deeper water. The shades of the color of the water will also help you determine how deep the water is. The deeper the color, the deeper the water. The lighter the color, the shallower the water. So if you start looking over to my right, you can start to see the waves break again out here. That's a sandbar. When you see those waves breaking, right there is a sandbar. And if you see the foamy water just in front of it, a lot of times fish will feed right where those waves are breaking on the sandbar because it's stirring up the bait. So that's a great place to have a rod casted out. Then I'm going to show you another point here. So you see this right there, that's a point. Those waves are breaking right on the shore break, and then just past that, it's a little bit deeper water. And so that point is helping to pin the fish into that deep trough before the next sandbar. So this is the fish highway right here in front. So that's another place that you want to have your rod casted out. There's a point. Here's the deep water. See how it's not quite breaking right here? You come back over here to the sandbar and to the point. Now that you've seen the on the water footage, let's take a deeper dive into that structure that we were just talking about and talk about why it's so important. First, let's go through high and low impact beaches. Two very different beaches will be fished two very different ways. So your high impact beach is going to be that beach that when you go and you walk down to the water, you actually are walking down a steep slope to get to that water's edge. So you know at a higher tide, that first shore break is going to be a nice deep piece of water. Your lower impact beaches are going to be more of a gradually sloped beach. So these beaches that are a little less featureless are going to probably be better to fish at a lower tide because remember, when you see that higher tide mark at a low impact beach, you're going to have to cast really far to get to any kind of deeper water. Let's now take a quick look at the anatomy of a sandbar, a trough, and then what it looks like when it breaks on the shore. So wave energy starts building and it creates that momentum. And as the waves are building, When they crash, they're crashing because of that sandbar structure. So as they crash and you see all that foamy, turbulent water, you know that there's going to be a sandbar there. As that foamy, turbulent water starts to get smoother and kind of even out a little more, that's running over what we're going to call a trough. That's going to be your deeper water. And then when you see that wave energy building up again and then crash right there at the beach, that's your shore break. So now that we have those basics down, let's go through what these beaches are going to look like at high tide versus low tide if we have this same structure scenario here. So at a higher tide, if I'm standing on the beach and I see that first set of breaking waves, that's going to be my first sandbar. So the waves are going to break. You're going to see that foamy, turbulent water. That's your first sandbar. And then as it smooths out before the shore break, so it's going to hit the first sandbar, smooth out in that deeper trough, and then break at the shore. If you're looking and let's say to your left, you see some breaking waves, and then in the middle, you've got some smoother, less turbulent water, and then to the right, you've got some breaking waves again, you know that there's going to be a run out in between those two sandbars. And again, at a higher tide scenario, you could have the first deep trough, that first sandbar, the second deep trough, and then outer bars. You may not be able to see that outer bar at a higher tide, but just know that once you see those waves start to build and break as the tide is getting lower, that's going to be your outer bar. So let's talk about what this beach would look like at low tide. So at low tide, if you're standing on the edge of this beach, you may be able to walk straight through that first deep trough all the way up onto the first sandbar. So this may be all sand where it was water before. You may have a couple of inches of water here, maybe up to a foot in your first deep trough or maybe in a hole, but you're not going to have enough water to hold fish. So at low tide, when you see this structure, you may be standing technically on that first sandbar. So then this is going to be your second deep trough, and then your outer bar that you're going to be able to see very distinctly at this point. So let's say I want to know where to put my baits on this particular beach at high tide versus low tide. So at a high tide on this beach, very quickly, I'm going to set my rods up in a spread, because I'm going to want to have rods out at different distances. Depending on how many rods you're taking, make sure that they're out at different distances so that you can find those fish. My first rod I would put right at the shore break, because I know that that water is getting stirred up, the bait's getting stirred up, and at higher tide, this is going to be a deeper trough. I would also put one right in the middle of that deep trough. Then I would put one at the edge of the sandbar, because as the water and the waves are hitting on that sandbar, stirring up the bait's rolling off the edge of that sandbar right into the fish highway. Would also have one in the run out, and then I may have one just past the run out. Think of runouts as almost like a bait buffet, because all of that wave energy that's flowing in has got to go somewhere, and it's going to run right back out to sea. So think of that as kind of your bait buffet that's connected to your fish highway. If there is enough water on top of this sandbar, I might put one right on top of the sandbar as well, but that's only if there's enough water for fish to be able to get up on that sandbar. So let's go through this same scenario at low tide. So at low tide, remember, you may be able to walk straight out from the beach to that first sandbar. So you're going to walk through that deep trough that maybe has a couple of inches of water in it, up onto that first sandbar, and you're going to set your rods up on that sandbar. And then you're going to follow the same situation with the high tide. So you're going to put one right at that shore break, just off into the first trough. You're going to put one in the middle of that trough. If there's enough water on this, what we're going to call the outer bar, it's now the first one. If there's enough water, I'm going to put one right on that sandbar. I'm going to put one right on the edge of the sandbar. And if you can cast really good, you're going to put one past that outer bar. So that's where I would have my baits at different distances and spread along the beach. So really quick, if you are scouting at low tide and you're seeing some sand that's jutting out, there may be some water right around it, you're going to identify that as a point. So a point is almost like a sandbar that's going out from the beach. It's creating an extra piece of structure that is right off of the beach. Sometimes you will see holes where the sand, it looks like it's curving in, and that's going to hold some deeper water in there. So especially at a higher tide, I'm going to have baits all around that point and in the middle of that hole. And it may not look as distinct as this, but if you can find that, that's a great place to put some baits. And keep in mind, this is just giving you the best case and the best chance at finding your fish by having your baits at different distances. You may not find fish here. You may have to move down the beach. Never be afraid to move if you are not catching fish. There will be more structure down the beach. You just have to go find it. Keep in mind that fish need two things. They need to be able to eat, and they need to be able to not be eaten. And finding that structure that's going to hold a lot of the food for fish and a lot of protection is going to be key for you being successful. So I hope that this was helpful for you. If you have any questions or feedback, definitely drop those in the comments below. And if you're new to Salt Strong, just know that we're the best online fishing club in America because we actually guarantee that you will catch more fish while saving time and money. We do this by providing you with our premium education, an exclusive online community, and huge discounts on the best tackle for saltwater anglers. To learn more, go to saltstrong.com, and we hope to see you in the Insider family soon.